Hi, thanks for watching. Today we're going to talk about the South Africa-Sri Lanka series in South Africa. Hot on the heels, of course, of the Australia-South Africa series. That ended in pretty dramatic fashion in that second test. Australia did really well, and we'll be talking more about them in the coming weeks, probably next week, in regards to the series against India. Obviously kicking off against New Zealand, and you can see my New Zealand preview from last week as well. South Africa-Sri Lanka. We'll start out with South Africa, I guess, because obviously it's fresh in everyone's mind. Pretty explosive series, pretty good series. Disappointing for South Africa, it's simple as that. I mentioned in my preview that there was a chance that South Africa might choke it away, as it were. It's a bit hard in this one. They did draw 1-1. It wasn't like they completely fell in a heap, or they did give it for 96 in one of the tests. But look, I don't think many people would have thought Australia could have drawn that series. And as I say, we'll talk about them in a moment, but next week. But yeah, South Africa. I was particularly disappointed in that fourth innings. I thought that was more than enough runs. I think that's really the nature of the issue. Up until that point, Australia had hung tough, but South Africa had sort of responded to every session. This big session I thought was the second session on day 4. When De Villiers and Amla batted through the session. That should have been enough. They had enough runs. They had 310 odd runs. That's enough. It's enough runs to win a test match on the 5th day against a mediocre batting card that had been bowled for 47. But it had also not passed 300. Although Australia won by only 2 wickets, they didn't do it by a really tight 2 wickets. It wasn't like a massive last wicket partnership or second last wicket partnership or anything. Stein was very good. All the big names in the batting card, Callis, Amla, De Villiers, Smith, they all made scores at some point in the series. Amla had an extremely strong series. So always that way with South Africa, particularly at home. We saw it against India when they drew a series against an inferior Indian team. Drew this series, lost to Australia at home. They don't put it together at home. When the pressure is on, they don't seem to play as well. And it's always something that goes wrong for them. Did find a guy in Vernon Philander who played great in that series. And that's a really... it's not critical, but it's a very handy thing to have. They go 3 strong on that pace attack and look as deep as England does now. Looking forward on that 3 pace attack with Philander, if he can continue his strong run of form, got good first class numbers. Unlike Ben Cummings, which Pat Cummings, who everyone's going nuts about, who could be great, like he bowled well, but like Philander's got a first class record behind him, and he's not quite the shiny new toy, so people aren't getting as excited. But he had a really good series against a reasonable-ish batting card, and should have some success. Should be a solid third seamer. Morkel, Stein, him look quite good. Imran Tahir, I saw a ball. Imran Tahir, real good wrong'em. That should also be of use to South Africans. There's no structural problem here. They hadn't played for a while. Thus the 96. That's the sort of blowing at the 4th innings. I think they'll be better for the hit out. I think they'll come to this series a lot better and in good form to take on the Sri Lankans. Smith's captaincy has to come again under some scrutiny. Didn't bowl Imran Tahir a huge amount in that 4th innings, which raised some eyebrows. Stein's also not necessarily getting a huge workload. They go to Callis a lot, who's not the same bowler as he once was. I would reduce those bowling overs. It's not necessary. If you have a reasonable quality slow bowler, and Imran Tahir, again, guy with a good first-class record, go to him. Don't go to Callis so much. Callis should be a change option at this stage of his career. Should be a partnership breaker. Should not necessarily be bowling in every innings. And currently South Africa, Graham Smith seems to be using Callis where, we have to bowl Callis at one point. He's going to be our second change option. I don't think that's the right role. I don't think it's good for Callis. I don't think it's good for South Africa. There we go. But yeah, so his captaincy is also a bit of an issue. So as I say, I expect South Africa to perform much better here. But they have been disappointing. It was a disappointing series. It was a quintessentially South Africa playing at home under pressure series, to be frank. And I expect them to come back with some ferocity here against the Sri Lankans. They've been disappointing. Speaking of disappointing teams, Sri Lanka, I've been doing these for a little while. I've been doing them for 6 months, since May, I think. We've seen India. Look, they lost to England badly, obviously very badly. But they've handled their business, maybe not as authoritatively as some would like, but they've handled their business against the West Indies in a home-and-home series. Australia, as much as everyone's on their backs, and I'll talk more about them soon. They've performed pretty well. They've drawn one home away series and won another one in Asia, where they had no slow bowling attack. They sort of manufactured it, so they've played well, frankly. Surprisingly well. But surprised me. I didn't pick either of their last 2 series. England obviously looking great. South Africa, a little minor speed bump here. They only drew a series. It's not the end of the world. irritating, but not the end of the world. It's actually gained points from it because they lost to Australia last time. They're looking fine. New Zealand we'll see soon. West Indies playing really, really tough in almost every test match they're playing. Pakistan have probably been the best team so far this year in terms of really surprising how they've looked and really turning some heads. They've won a lot of test matches, a lot more than you would have thought, with a sort of bits and pieces team. And Zimbabwe also making quite a surprising comeback into cricket. Sri Lanka have been the disappointment of 2011. They've been the worst team in terms of their expectations this year. They have not looked good almost at any point this year. I thought against England they played okay. They lost 1-0, a very bad loss. They were all out in 26 overs, I think, in the last session or something. Really quick collapse. But I thought that was okay. But they played terribly, they batted terribly in particular against Australia, and then they should not have lost against Pakistan. There's a home series and a away series, but it's two series I would have been favoured in. I certainly picked them, and I look like a bit of a fool doing so. They are playing badly at the moment. Sangakkara's playing okay. No one else is really showing up. Like, I'll give you an example. Mahela Jayawardena, who's been one of the most consistent batsmen in world cricket for a long time. He's averaging 25.11 this year. He has seven single-figure scores in 17. He's 34 now, so he's not young, and this could fall off. I'm not quite ready to write him off in the quite the same way I have Ponting, because it is only this year, previous to this, 50 averages and so on, but it has been very poor, and he needs to perform. Unfortunately, he doesn't play well in South Africa. He's only got a 10% score percentage and averages 31.4. He's only scored one score in 10 innings in South Africa, and that was without Dale Steyn, by the way. It was back in 2002, and we were probably a better cricketer, so that's a concern. Jayawardena, if you take Jayawardena out of the card, Dilshan playing so badly, and Samuel Wera no longer at the team, that batting card, which was so imposing, now is Sangakkara, great, but still no support. Paranavitana has had his moments and is coming along, and Angelo Matthews for that matter too, which have been two finds and are valuable for Sri Lanka moving forward, but still, you can't take the production of 45 plus players out of that team and expect them to do very well. Bowling, obviously, this was more expected as being an issue, but in example, in the Pakistan series, they lost, shockingly. Only two bowlers took more than 1 wicket per match. Two bowlers took more than 1 wicket per match. It was Wollagadera and Herat. Other than that, it was just dead. They just could not get wickets. They just cannot get wickets. Herat has not been as good as one might hope coming back into the team to replace Murali. Obviously, he's not going to be Murali, but we did think he'd be a solid first-class option. He's not doing that badly, but he's also not doing that great, and probably has been below fairly modest-ish expectations. Sri Lanka are bowling at 44.47 this year, and they haven't won any of their 9 tests. That's what I'm saying. They're the most disappointing team in world cricket. I don't think that winning is going to turn around in South Africa. Fury. I think South Africa are more match fit now than they have been previously. I think that they'll be keen to erase some of the demons of that second test they lost. I think they're a really good team. They're a much better team than Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka look to be a worse team than Australia. I didn't think I'd be saying that 6 months ago, but that's what the results have borne out. Lost to Pakistan, lost to Australia at home. I still believe in the batting card. I think Jayawardena can do something. Dilshan's not this bad, although I don't like him, but he's not this bad. One guy that has been batting quite well is Prasanna Jayawardena, their wicketkeeper. So they've got a little bit more tooth in that middle order. It's probably the one area you don't really need to worry about having a strong part of your test team, but Angelo Matthews and Jayawardena are both batting pretty well. So there is some batting here at least. And Sangakkara is the kind of guy that can hold his own against Steyn. And I think Paranavitana, get that out, is a promising player at opener. And I think this is a really good experience for him playing Dale Steyn, someone of that quality. So I think they can draw one test. That's putting it briefly. I think they can win one of the tests. Draw one of the tests. I think South Africa will win the other two. I would be pretty amazed if Sri Lanka could beat South Africa in a test match here. Wollagadera, Herat against the quality of batting that we know that South Africa has. So Sri Lanka are hoping to perhaps have a good Sangakkara innings accompanied by Dilshan making a score, maybe another couple of scores down the order from Angelo Matthews and Prasanna Jayawardena, something like that, to manufacture a draw. They're not going to get the wickets. It's not going to happen. So South Africa 2-0. Sorry about the lighting; it's a bit dark today. So yeah, a little bit darker. But anyway, join me probably next week. We'll talk about Australia versus India, which happens in Boxing Day. And so that's South Africa, Sri Lanka. Thanks very much, guys. All the best.